Hello aspiring developers, welcome back to today's session. Hope you're doing fine. Today we are going to tackle APIs. In the previous video, we handled asynchronous JavaScript and we learned about the async await and we also used the fetch, but now with a URL. So today we are also going to learn about APIs. We're going to use Ninja APIs as our API provider. We're also going to use Postman website to help us visualize the movement of data via the API endpoints. So for the interest of time, let's dive right in. Today I'm going to take you through how to get your own API key. So first I'm going to use Ninja APIs. You just tap on the first link that you find there and you see that you can get a free API key. So if you don't have an account like I don't, you can just type in this, fill in this information. So you just quickly fill in the information here. Yeah, your name, your email, you can use a strong password. Yeah, you see that you're already registered. Yeah, so now you'll receive an email to the email that you set there, so that you can just verify your email. You just tap on verify email. It will take some time. Yeah, you see that the email has been confirmed. Now you can simply tap to log in to your new account. Just input your new email and password there. Then you sign in. So you see that we have simply created an account with API Ninjas. So basically, when you're a developer and you still don't have the funds, you can just access a few APIs, but you will not have the commercial membership. So if you see here, you have your billing options. You can change it in case you want to now do some other additional stuffs. See that you get up to 200,000 API calls per month. But for now, because you only want to use I'll just tap on X because you want to use the current subscription that you have, and that is the one that is free. So here you see that you have been provided with the API key. So you can just tap on show API key. So this is the API key that you're going to use. You can simply change it by the tap of one single button. Yeah, so you see, just type there, change. So most probably by the time you are watching this video, I'll have changed the API key, so that you can also go and create your own API key and try using it. Yeah, so here we have an API key. This is the key. I just come here to APIs, and then you choose the API that you want to use, or rather to fetch some data from. I can say maybe animals. Yeah, so I need to use the animals API. You see that the animals API provides interesting scientific facts on thousands of different animal species. Here we have guidance on how to access the animals API. Then you see that it is calling the HTTP GET method, which returns up to 10 results matching the input name parameters. The parameters given, you see that we have name as required, so you must follow this. You have name as required. This is a common name for of an animal search, and you see that it supports partial matches. So you can just type in fox to get two types of fox. Then here you see that you have on the headers of your API, you need to include this variable X API key. We're going to see how to work with that in a moment. And now if you send in the API URL, you can just test here maybe which animal, like say goose. So when you send the request, you see that you get some types of geese there. There is the Egyptian goose. You see the some information about it. Yeah, so you get several there. And just below it, you see code examples where we have Python, JavaScript, Node, Java, and Swift. So you see that this is how you set the API from the browser, but we're going to use the method that we showed in the previous video where we learned about asynchronous JavaScript. Yeah, so the next thing that I'm going to show you is how to test this API that this sample API, or rather we test our own API. There's a website known as Postman, or rather you can still download the Postman desktop app, but for now we are going to use the website. Here also you can just sign up for free. So you just pass in your email. I'll simply pass in our email there, gmail.com, and you type on sign up for free. So you see that it brings up to this page, and I can simply click on sign up with Google. So you see that it allows us to test our code. So I'm just going to continue with my email here, janzaprogrammers@gmail.com. Yeah, so I just continue to sign in to Postman. Yeah, this should take a second. Yeah, so now we have our Postman account created, and you see that we can now use the Postman website. There's also the Postman desktop app. If at all you feel free enough to use Postman desktop app, you can go and try it out. On the Postman website, you can just click on download. So this is the initial setup of Postman. Though we're not going to learn about Postman a lot at this point. So here you just choose who you are. You can say you are a mobile, okay, where is it? Front-end developer. Yeah, so that one can be changed over time when you need to select a new preference. So you just tap on one that fits your needs. In this case, the one that fits my needs was Janja Programmers, and I'm signing up for the front-end web for the front-end web developer. So now you see that our Postman has already been loaded. We have our workspace. There's this info to tell you that you can join the Postman community. So you can just tap on learn more if you want to learn more about them. So here you see that you have your own personal workspace. So for you to use this workspace, you can just create a collection, because you may want to have several items within that workspace. So here in new collection, you can just tap on rename. And then in our case, we are dealing with the animals API. So you can just call the collection animals. Then in this animals connection, I want to add a request. So you see that by default, it gives me the get HTTP request. Yeah. So you can always change the type that you want. And you know that get is used to fetch data from a site, or rather from the API. We have the post to send data to that API endpoint. Then you have the put patch, you have the delete, you have the head, you have the options. But for today, we're only going to test the get method, because today we are simply learning about how to use an API. So for the animals workspace, my new request will be on description. So I just need description of animals, or rather, yeah, just description of animals. And then now here you paste in the URL that you want to get. So you see here, API Ninjas gave us this. There is this URL, or rather you can use this one. This will be the simplest to copy. Just copy this one below sample URL. Copy that, or if that is a bit difficult for you, you can just come and copy this other one down here. But the easiest one to use is the one that we see here as a sample request URL. So all you need to do is just highlight it, then copy, come to your description, and you paste it there. So you see that it checks the value name, and if you send this request, it's going to return missing API key. You see there's an error there saying missing API key. So you need to set everything all the way from the parameters. So the only parameter you are passing, as you can see here, is the name. Then you have the authorization. So here is where you set the API key. So you come and choose from this type. You just say the authorization you're going to use is the API key. Then here you input the key. So the key, or rather you know that authorization is done in key value, or rather data is stored in key value pairs. So the key for your API key is known as the X API key. So you have to use this as the key for your API key. So just copy this X API key, just copy it, and then you paste it here at key. And then here the value, you now just come to this, you come back to my account, and then you tap on show API key, you copy your key, then you go back to your Postman website and you paste it there. So this is being added to either the header or the query parameters. So depending on the API provider that you're using, so back to API directory, we are fetching the animals, and you see that it tells us to add this to the header. So we're going to add it to our header. So you choose header, and then you go to the headers. Yeah, now, now you already have the API key. You see that the error that was there was missing an API key. Now you already have the API key. So you just tap on send once again. Now you see the error says that we are missing a name parameter. It must be provided. So back to this, you see that this HTTP get request will return up to 10 results. But what is required is the name parameter. So all you need to do is to pass in a name of an animal for you to get like details about that animal. So here we are just going to pass to the name. Now here at the get URL, we're going to pass a name equals, what can we say, a lion. You tap on send. Sorry, have I tapped this correctly? Name equals then lion. So send. Yeah, now you see that we have, let me just pull this up. We have a body, and you can just filter it using pretty. Then you choose how you want it to be shown. You can choose HTML, but you see HTML is looking a bit so bad. So you can use JSON, because you know that JSON is the one that we use to learn. So here you see that I have several data on types of animals. So we have the types of lions. We have the lion named the Cape lion. You see there is a lot of data about it here. The second lion you have is the golden lion tamarin. Some data about it is also there. We also have the lion, just the name lion. We also have this lion's mane jellyfish. These are fish. See, it lives in the ocean. We have the lionfish, also lives in the ocean. We also have the mountain lion. This is an animal in Central, North, and South America. So basically, this means that our API has worked successfully, and that's why you see that it has the status 200, to mean that the response has been returned successfully. Here it just shows you the amount of time it took for your API to return the data, then the size that your API returns, the size of data that your API returns. So if you need to maybe save this data, you can just tap on save as, not save as. You can just tap on save up here. So this will save your current workspace with the list here description, and the description is on animals. Or rather, you can just call this lion, because I'll just rename this to lion. So this workspace, this is my workspace, and this my workspace has a collection. This collection, I've named it to animals. This animals collection has a list of the animals that we get. So we can now, we can even get another animal, say a cat. So just type in the same, just type in the same that parameter, then you change it to, I change this to, since you have a lion, LOIL. So we can have the value there as which other animal can we check? Maybe a cat. So when you send this, once again you're going to see missing API error, missing API key, because we haven't saved this in the new get method. So you just come again to authorization. Then on authorization you choose API key, and here you just set that API key. You see that it just populates it for us. So if you type on send once again, yeah, you see that we have no data there on cat. So maybe we can try another parameter. So say what can we say? You can say gazelle. Just type on send. Gazelle also does not return any data. Okay, let's try cheetah. You see cheetah returns some data. So there is some data on the cheetah animal. There is just one type of cheetah, so it returns that single type of cheetah. So you see that this JSON data, you can use it anywhere within your website. So the only thing that you need to understand at this point is using that how the body is returned. And I said you can just tap on pretty, then JSON, you choose JSON there. This is just to wrap it. Then on this first line, you need to understand the parameters. So whatever parameters that you're going to pass here, depending on whatever API you've been given, then you can just even add other parameters to your list there. Then the authorization, this is where you pass in your values, but it is important to set these values as to pass them as variables. So you can just Control X, or rather cut that, and then you pass there the variable key, and you come to your environments here, then to your globals, and you can add a new variable. You can call the new variable key, just leave it as default. Then the initial value, you can paste in your API key, and then you can just save on that. So when you come back to, okay, this is the overview, getting started, the globals that we've just set, the lion, we have finished with the lion. So this one, yeah. So when you come back and tap on send, you still see that you are able to see your data. So I'm doing this, I'm showing you that because it is important to have your API key safe. So for you to have it very safe, then you have to store it in a variable. And a variable is accessed using that syntax of double curly braces. Either way, you can just come and highlight it, and when you hover there, it should bring that set variable. Yeah, you see set as variable, just tap on it, and then you can store it on the key with the scope of global. So that's it on how to get an API key, or rather how to create an API account with API Ninjas, how to create a Postman account for you to test your website, to test your APIs that you get. So this one is cheetah. You can just save this as cheetah. We save it to the animals collection. So you just tap on save. Now if you go back to collections, you see that on the animals you have a list of two API calls. So now if you go back to your API and you try and just check on your account, you see that you have 7 calls this month. This one just gives you the stats of how your API has been used. So basically that is how to create an API account, and that is how to use the Postman to validate your API key. So if you want to use that one, we have just shown visually how to update your, or rather how to test your APIs. So once you've tested your APIs and you see that it returns some JSON data here, now you can know how to manipulate this data or how to access it from your website. So let us quickly go and try accessing this data from our website. Yeah, so before we even go back to Visual Studio Code, it's important to, let's just go back to animals API. You see that there is a predefined code examples that had already been provided. So if your programming language is not listed, you can still make API calls using the HTTP request library written in your programming language and following the above documentation. So they have a documentation. I believe here at examples, when you tap on this, you'll get the documentation. But because our language JavaScript is provided, we're simply going to pick this JavaScript code that they have given unto us, and are going to use it in Visual Studio Code. So now I'm simply going to paste that data that we copied. Paste. We have our variable here named cheetah. Then we have this one is using the Ajax to call the method. The method is get. The URL being accessed is that is the API that we've been given. Then it's passing that name that which is cheetah there. And at our headers, you see that it takes X API as the key. So you need to pass in your API key as the value here. And then now you can in the body, you can always this is the content type, so it's going to pass it as JSON. And if this is successful, you're going to see logged on your console the result. So currently we just run the script. So say node, and the name of the script is my API. So you see that that is not defined because we have not used the, or rather we have not imported the support for the Ajax. So let us start with creating, let's say, can just have a simple index.html. Yeah. So here we have our simple HTML code. We can just link. Let's quickly create a H1. Just say H1 here. H1 testing APIs. And then we can have a div here. Just say div with the ID container. Here. Then here you can have a H2. Maybe say name. And also you can have a p tag with the ID of description. So we have our container, our name, and our description. So let's just quickly pass the support for the Ajax so that our Ajax codes will work correctly. So back to our browser. So for you to use Ajax, you need to have the Ajax CDN. A CDN is just a content delivery network. So you just tap on jQuery, and then you see here that we have this Cloudflare for the jQuery. So you just need to come and tap here on copy URL, or you can tap on copy script tag. So just copy the script tag, and then you go back to our HTML and paste our Visual Studio Code and paste this script tag that you simply come and paste that script tag there. So this will now allow us to use jQuery. So let's just tap on go live so we can see, so that we can see this from our website. And we can add a simple input field here below the H2. So say the H2 will take animal. Then we can just pass a simple input of type text. We can have a placeholder there. We can tap in the placeholder search animal. Yeah. So now let's view our website. We can add an ID to this input. So ID, you can say ID animal name. ID animal name. Animal name. So let's look at our website from the localhost 5500. So we'll simply come and tap localhost 5500. Allow me to close this websites, these URLs that we have finished working with. Just leave that for now. I can zoom in a bit so that you are able to at least see this well. And if I open the developer tools, so you see that we are getting we are getting no problem with there is no problem, with JavaScript, whatever is being passed by JavaScript. So if you come here and say, okay, we need also to add a button to handle submission of this input, and that means that we'll have the input in a form. So let's also check on that. So we can have all this. We can have this search in a form. So just say form, and this is a form to post, and then you can simply add the input inside that form, and you can have a button. Just say button with the ID submit, or with the ID of search, and you can just call it search animal. Yeah. So let's clear this terminal, and we are not going to use the console, but we're going to use the browser. So we have our simple website here. We are accepting the use of asynchronous JavaScript. Yeah, so we can pick it either from this point, collect environment globals, then you can pick it from here and copy, or you can simply come back to this point, just go to my account, show API key, and then you tap this button here to copy it. So either of the two can happen. So let's paste it back to our Visual Studio Code, and I hope that yeah, our changes also refreshed. So here, so let's just simply paste the API key here. So there we have our URL and our API key. But I believe that it's a bit inconvenient because we haven't learned about jQuery yet. So allow me to change this code to the normal JavaScript. Then we'll learn about jQuery in the next video. So the normal JavaScript, we'll just we can even include now these other codes. You know that first we have to select this from our DOM. So because we're not using jQuery, I'll just remove this, and instead I'll write in there my API. Okay, the SRC should be popping somewhere there. Yeah, my API JS. So let us use the my API JS instead of the jQuery. I'm just commenting it so that we can borrow the way that it has been pre-formatted by our API provider. So normally, like I say in every video, when you use JavaScript to modify the DOM, then it's good to start with document.addEventListener, and then you call the DOM content loaded event, and when that is loaded is when you can now start performing any functions that you are intending to perform. So now that we already have passed that on DOM content loaded, we can start selecting. You can start with the search. Allow me first to remove the console, the terminal, and I have this side by side for quick coding. Okay. Just want to have it beside here. Yeah, correct. So now I can at least easily look at the IDs that we set there. So let me start with the documents.getElement. dot get element document dot get element by id, and here I'm going to pass in the search, this search id. We are going to search for the animal, and then on that search you want to add an event listener, so just say dot add event listener. The event that you are listening for that search is the click event, and then we're going to pass in the function where we will take that event that we are listening to. We'll perform some activities inside that function body. So whatever activities you're going to perform, first, now that you know we have a form, we need to pass in the prevent default method to handle the refreshing of the, see that if invoked, it will cancel the attribute value being true, and while executing a listener for the event, which with passive set to false, it signals to the operation that caused the event to be dispatched that it needs to be cancelled. So we said that this one is helping us to handle the default, or rather to prevent resubmission of the form. So we already have that passed. So the next thing we have to initiate, or rather we have to declare our variable name, and this variable name, you see here we are passing a variable name, and we are hard coding cheetah into that name. But for now we want to get that name from the input element. So just say document.get element by by id, and our id here for the input is animal name. So just pass in that animal name id. I realized some mistype there. Yeah, so we pass in the animal id there, which is animal name. So we have our name selected, but we need the value of we need the value that is buried in this input tag. So we call the dot value. Yeah. So we have our variable name there, and we select, or rather we select the input id, input with the id of name, and then we call the dot value. So after we have the value stored in the name variable, we are going to now call the fetch method. So you simply say fetch, and you know that fetch takes a URL. It can take an input and then URL and an initializer so that it returns a promise. So we are simply going to pass in the URL that you have here. So this is our URL. I'm copying it from this commented out code. So we pass in our URL there, but you remember to remove this tag URL and the commenting. You can also use template literals to make all this very simple. So we've defined a variable there name. We're just simply going to pass it here as name. Where is the problem there? Okay. See that we're experiencing some trouble. Let me copy it again. We need the URL. Yeah. So the URL that we are taking, let me just remove the comments. This is the URL that we need, but we have to pass in this name value. So we're going to first add this name value here. Yeah, then we can now pick this URL and store it in the in template literals. So let's just cut this and paste it inside here in template literals. So we can now remove this. Where is it? Can remove the whole of this. So there we've already defined our fetch function, and we've passed in our URL, and you see that we are concatenating a name variable, and the name variable is picking the value from our HTML. So after that, the second attribute of this fetch, we're going to pass in the method that we've been given by our API provider. So we see here that the API provider suggests that we pass in all this information. So let's just uncomment this. Let's uncomment. Okay, let's uncomment the whole of it first. We're converting this Ajax to a normal JavaScript so that we can easily understand how to go about this the normal way. So we have the method. We have the method here as get. So we can pass all that information. Or rather, let's just copy it. Let's just copy the whole of this up to this point. Yeah, we can cut it out of that Ajax, and then we just paste it in. I just paste that object in our fetch method. Then we remove this Ajax. So as simple as that. So now we have our fetch that takes our URL, and then it also takes this set of parameters. So you see that the method is get just as suggested. Since we have already passed in the URL and the name, we can remove this line. Then for the headers, we need the X API key and our key type there. So for the content type, we needed to return a JSON file. So this success, we're going to handle it on our own. Let's just remove this one that they've given unto us. Okay, we have the header closing at that point, and the header has the key and the content type. So we can pass in the content type to our header. Let's simply pass in this to our header, so that we only have three. We only have the URL and the object taking two variables. That is the method and the header object. So in our header is where we are going to pass the API key and the content type. So now that we already have that implemented, we don't need a comma because we're only passing one object. So we already have that implemented. You know that after the fetch, you always call the dot then. So you can now come and call the dot then to handle the fulfillment of our API call. So there you can simply, if you remember the previous syntax, you simply pass the response, and then you return you return the response, but you pass it to a JSON. You pass it to be JSON. So call the dot JSON to pass that data that you've received. And after you've passed it to JSON, you know that you now need to pick that data, and you can now return the here is where you now write how or where you want that data to be placed. So here you see that okay, this input should be inside the form. Yeah. So here you see that after we pass in the input, we are going to store that description in a p tag with the ID of description. So let's select this p tag where we are going to store this data. So simply you can just say document dot get element by ID, and there the ID that we are passing first is the name of that animal, because we want to here we're just saying animal, so we're searching for any animal, or rather we can here we can just have this as animal for the title, that is displaying our title. Actually it should be outside the form. Then we can have here now for the description, we also need a h2 now with the ID of animal. You can say ID of animal so that we know which animal you are passing, or the animal that we've searched, and the description of that animal. So here we are getting element by ID animal. Are we having another animal? Okay, yeah, animal. So we've selected that animal and then we simply pass the text content. And the text content that you are passing is the data. So we are accessing that data that we are picking from the API, and the first, or rather the first instance of that data, because you know that it returns several animals. So the first one, then the dot name to return the name of that animal. Or rather, we can just look at our APIs and we see the structure of the data that we are expecting. Yeah, so when we rerun this script, we want to see the response that we'll get. We see how it's structured. Yeah, you see that yeah, we're having name, and then I also want to look at the description. Which other data can we pass here? Okay, so we can pass in the name and characteristic, maybe characteristics dot pray. So we have our name, and the next one will be the characteristic dot pray. So here we simply pass in the data dot name, and then we can have another document dot get element by ID, and this time we're getting the description ID. Or rather, here we can say characteristics, because I saw they are called characteristics. So characteristics, but you know this is an object, so just say their characteristics. Yeah, and then they're also passing the dot text content, and we're equating that to the data, the first data dot that characteristics. So dot characteristics. Yeah, so now that we already have that in place, the next thing that we need is the catch, just in case it throws an error. So we pass in the dot catch, and we also know that the dot catch will take error as a variable, and then it will return console.error, and then there you can pass in your error message. So we are going to say error, and we pass in the error message, or you can just say error.type. Is it error.error type? Okay, you can just pass in the error itself. Yeah, so we have our complete JavaScript file to handle the API that we've just fetched right now. So let's head over to our browser and see all these in action. And now if you refresh this localhost, page isn't working. So localhost, yeah. So here we have our testing APIs. Then we have our animal, and we have an input there to search for the animal. So let's start with cheetah, the one that we know has some value. Then we tap on search animal. Okay, you see that we have a problem. Get element by ID. Oh, sorry. Here we passed in dot value as a function instead of you know that value is just an attribute of the input type of the input element. So you see we can have a default value cheetah, just such that just in case we don't have a value, the first one that we get when we tap on submit, it will return the elements, the details of the cheetah variable. So I believe that is that. Any other problem? Oh, this is also a problem, because we were using the Ajax syntax, but now this is JavaScript. So you have to pass in this method as this. You have to pass in the key as a string, and Ajax has the syntax of camel case. But in our case, you're going to have the syntax as content type. Yeah, so the refreshed browser does not have any errors. Let's just tap on search animal. You see that it returns cheetah, and the description returns an object. Elements, then our JavaScript code. Okay, this is not our script, so let's just head back to our, or rather, we can look at it from the website. We see that we have the characteristics, but this one returns an object. Okay, so we have characteristics as an object, and we want to access the prey. We want to access the prey, the key prey, so that we can see the praise that the praise for the specific animal that we are passing. So we see that animal returns cheetah, but for the the characteristics it returns an object. Yeah, so now let's modify the object, the one that you are returning object, so that it can return the exact characteristics. So yeah, here we first have the characteristics. Then we take the dot. There was that characteristic on taxonomy. Then that was an object, and it had the value of scientific name. So we can return the scientific name. I believe it was an underscore, but you can pass all this in. Yeah, we can pass it there. So here we can just say like scientific name, so that we give it some detailed description, and we can copy the whole of this so that we can reuse this bit of code to output maybe 4 different characteristics. How is the error here? I can see some error. It must be this one. Where is that error coming from? Okay, let's just undo all this. Oh, we did not copy the whole thing correctly. Yeah, so we can set the context of the scientific name. I hope I'll remember all those details. But here this one is being passed as a variable, so we can just do this. And then we can also have another characteristic of I believe there was one on which other characteristic was there? The prey. Yeah, there was one on the prey. I believe there was one on prey, and the one on prey can also pass data. So let's just pass that data. It was on characteristic, but this one on taxonomy was not in characteristics, so it was just directly taxonomy. So data.taxonomy, then this one is dot characteristic. Here we are having dot believe it was something like dot prey, just directly like that. And we're also having something like name of young. So let's just have the 3 of them because I don't have that reference point. Okay, yeah, this should be okay at this point. Should have something to close it. Sorry, not that, but this. Yeah, but we don't need the semicolon, we need that. Yeah, so that's now okay. Here we are passing the name, the name of the animal. We can also pass this as just the same way that we are passing all the other ones. So you can just pass in as a variable, and you say animal, and it will pick in the data of that animal, or rather the name of that animal. Then here we are passing the name, the scientific name, the prey, and here you can pass in the we said we'll pass in the sibling, the name of sibling. Yeah, so for the name of sibling, I believe it was denoted something like a name of young. If it is not right, we'll just edit it again. So let's pass there. Was it name of young with underscores? Yeah, I believe it was something like the name of young, but now it was passing the underscores. So name underscore of young. These are the three that I remember. These are the three that I remember seeing. If at all there's any other, then we can just look at it after we refresh the browser. So now let's refresh the browser. You can just close the developer tools and zoom a bit. Yeah. So here we're passing the cheetah. Let's search. And you see that it returns cheetah, and cheetah is a sibling of cub. If we pass in the lion, it returns cape lion with a sibling of cub. But you see this one returns one result. So you can have it to return several results using the loop. So we can try that. I believe we are going to only use the loop to check on the result, and also we see how we can hide our API key from the external environment. So yeah, here we had the characteristic, the name of the prey and the name of young. Oh, we also had a taxonomy with a scientific name. So taxonomy.scientific underscore name. So first we can loop through the data that we receive, and then we just pass in that unit. So you can just say for let's say let index equals 0, then you can say index less than data.length index plus plus, then we pass all this inside our index before the closing of the then. Then instead of passing 0, we'll just pass the index. So that way we'll achieve the looping over to get the at least several data. Then here we had data index.taxonomy .scientific name. Finally, when you refresh the browser and you search, we're going to see the animal has been printed, the sibling has been printed. So let's try and search for a different animal, say giraffe. Just type in here giraffe. Is giraffe double R or double F? Okay, giraffe does not return any value. Giraffe. Something must be going on. Yeah, there it is. Giraffe returns calf. You can try maybe sea lion. Like we had already seen, there is an animal known as sea lion. So sea lion has an undefined sibling. We have the these other animals like ducks. So let's try and search for the duck. You see that we have a Nova Scotia duck. This is Stalling Retriever. The sibling is undefined. So basically that's how to use APIs, and that's how to implement them on websites. So you can always use that data to customize, or rather to provide information for a website. You can maybe say you have an animal documentary site, and you need to pass some description about some specific animals. So you can use the animal APIs.